Hi everyone, how's it going? This is Eden of Light Cycle Astrology back again with another Mantic Monday episode. This is episode 34, and this week we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of things happening in the sign of Taurus. One of them is the Taurus new moon that is coming through at the beginning of the week, but towards the end of the week we do have a Sun conjunct Uranus aspect that forms in the sky. And this is happening co-present with Venus, also in the sign of Taurus, Venus being the ruler and host of both the new moon and the Sun-Uranus conjunction. And of course, we still have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that is beginning to separate out by now, but is still pretty active and in this sign. So a lot of things are boiling down to this part of the sky right now. We're going to try to synthesize and render down what do all of these things have in common. Is there a meaning that we could give to a new moon in Taurus that is really close to a Sun-Uranus conjunction that is happening at the tail end of a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, co-present with Venus? What is all of that speaking to? We'll get into a few themes that are hopefully tangible for you guys that you can watch for, that are matriculating around all of this Taurus activity. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave some comments in the comment section, and you can always find me at lightcycleastrology.com if you want to check out a reading from me. Okay, well, as per usual, let's go ahead now and we'll take a look at the chart. I've got the chart set to the time of the new moon that is happening, depending on where you are, either really late Tuesday or early Wednesday. But right around, the middle of the week here, we have the new moon coming through. Of course, first the moon enters the sign, passes by Venus, and then conjoins with the sun. But then shortly thereafter, the moon is going to be passing by Uranus and then Jupiter before leaving Taurus. So we have this big Taurus stellium that is clearly a concentration of astrological energy in this one part of the zodiac right now. So it's an important thing to take a look at. Now, we'll get right into what all of this means, but one thing that is really special here, of course, is that when you have stelliums, it's really nice when the ruler or the domicile lord of the sign has reception to that sign. And of course, one of the best receptions that can happen, according to ancient astrologers, is when the ruler is actually in the sign, co-present with the other planets. And there was kind of a host-guest relationship that was a way in which made sense for ancient peoples to try to understand, okay, Venus is going to be taking care of the guests that are temporarily housed in the sign of Taurus, as Venus is kind of like the steward of that place, right? So right off the bat, we know that the things that may be symbolized by all of these planets in Taurus is going to have a lot to do with Venus. So that's just a basic interpretation right off the bat. And because Venus is right there, she's not just able to have reception back to the sign of Taurus, she's actually in Taurus. So she has good dignity herself and is potentially able to provide a lot more support to these planets. So when the planets are trying to affect something, or when they, maybe more an accurate way to say it, when planets are representing things that we're trying to affect, it's potentially going to work out a lot more favorably. So that's a positive thing in my mind. Okay, but let's get rid of the chart here, and we'll just take a look at some of the basic themes that could be matriculating around all of this Taurus energy. Now, the first one, now most of these are going to be really close cousins. They're just going to be slightly different angles on kind of one overarching theme. And I think theme number one is going to be just sort of diving into the broad strokes of all of this Taurus energy. And I'm calling it surprise, I'm pregnant. Now, I don't want to say that, okay, everybody's going to be getting pregnant right now, but that the energy of that surprise, I'm pregnant thing with so many planets in Taurus a Venus ruled sign, there is a lot that can be said about creativity, right? Venus is a very creative planet, a very artistic planet. So this overarching contact with creativity is a real big thing right now. And then, of course, you get the surprise element that comes along that is like a wild card or a Hail Mary or, just anything that comes out of the blue. And of course, we all know surprises can range from really good to not so great, right? So Uranus brings that sort of wild card energy to this, but it's very creative in the sign of Taurus, all of these things. Now, all three alignments, the new moon that comes just before the Sun-Uranus conjunction, Uranus' synodic reset with the sun itself, that annual movement where the sun has returned back to the same position that Uranus is in the sky, which happens, of course, one time a year as the sun tracks around the zodiac one time. This Uranus synodic reset, the new moon, and the still very active Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, all three of these aspects are speaking to beginnings, or that sort of fresh renewal of something. So when you get a lot of beginning kind of symbolism happening in a Venus sign with Venus co-present, for me, there's a big, broad, overarching theme that this is definitely marking something like the beginning of a new cycle of creativity, the beginnings of new relationships or friendships, potentially, even sexuality that is not only new, but needs the freedom to discover what it is. So in all of these instances, I feel like Uranus is saying, I can't be held down. I'm feeling very creative, or there's very creative things happening. Maybe there's very artistic things happening, and it needs room to breathe. You sort of almost have to uncork the cap, on the wine bottle and let the spirits out in some way. So for me, that is kind of an overarching thing. For instance, like right now, I've just started learning the accordion. Very hard instrument to play, but it's a very romantic instrument, right? It's you think of like La Viva a Rose, and I'm sure you guys know that song, but very romantic. But for me, it's the beginning of a long process of hopefully being able at one point to play this thing in some kind of way. Time will tell on that, but this very romantic instrument comes to me, and it's like, oh, this is the beginning of something really that could be lasting quite a long time. But that's the symbolic message of the moment, is a lot of this new moon energy, right? The birth or the sprout of something new, but it's creative and it has that artistic or creative potential in it. But other examples, exploring sexual fantasies with a partner, for instance, sharing and opening up surprising things that you didn't know about each other, either in the bedroom or just in any kind of on any kind of level with a friend or a romantic partner. That is something I could see also being potentially an experience that people are going to resonate with right now. Oh, I never shared that with this person, and somehow it opens things up, or something like that. But I think also literally you could have the unexpected pregnancy where, surprise, you have to tell somebody that you're expecting all of a sudden. So all of that creative power is really coming through right now, and it wants to be released. It wants to be unfettered and opened up, and it has kind of that wild card, surprising, out of nowhere power that also may come along with it. So that is theme number one, which is really just kind of an overarching theme of all of these themes. But so all of these other themes are really going to be just slightly different angles of that. Number two is the beginning of trying something new for the next 12 months. So of course, very similar, but sometimes we just begin something and we're not sure how long we're going to do it for. Might be a YouTube channel, might be a new hobby. Maybe you get into photography or whatever, or like for me, the accordion, right? Whatever it is, but it has that maybe that idea of something that is expanding out for maybe a year or something like that. And maybe you come back around next year and maybe that is another ring on the tree of expansion that is then incorporated more deeply. But at first, sometimes you just need to try something out and you don't know how long you're going to keep doing that for. But like the sense in which that there's kind of an annual return with the sun and Uranus coming back together one time a year, and Uranus having that innovative quality that wants to experiment or try something, so it's like you're just testing something out. I think that's theme number 2, and it doesn't have to be for precisely 12 months, but it's definitely probably something lasting longer than just, a month, maybe even 2 months. It's something that probably is going to take a while to really unfold and for the discovery to happen over a little bit of a longer time span. So that's theme number 2, the beginning of trying something out. Theme number 3 is going to be the wild card that changes the game, the fluke, the Hail Mary, the collision that knocks something out of orbit. In my mind, when I was thinking about this Sun-Uranus conjunction, the new moon coming through, Jupiter-Uranus also speaking quite strongly to the same kind of overarching archetypal theme here is how does fate play into this? How do things come along that have nothing to do with us? And the image I got was asteroids that are all knocking about in the solar system, and they're kind of that they don't have an orbit yet, and they're kind of colliding into each other. Uranus was actually mythologically very related to the primordial chaos of the universe. It's pre-order. For instance, like before gravity is big enough and begins to pull things into it, which creates some kind of stabilization. There's Uranus, which is like pre-stabilization, pre-gravity. There's just asteroids that are just flying every which way in a chaotic manner. And something comes along and maybe something is a little stable, right? Taurus, a fixed sign, but then there's that asteroid that comes along and just, almost there's a collision that bounces it off like a billiard ball, and then all of a sudden, whatever pattern, whatever orbital, direction that was happening is just knocked out of place. So the wild card energy is something that can come along. Now, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing ever. It can be just something small, but it can lead to that sense of change just insofar as you didn't see it coming and it's sort of out of your hands. And it's almost like the universe looking down on us and saying, I like to mess with you guys every now and again, because it's, what am I going to do to entertain myself? I've created all of these beings, but, it's sometimes fun to see, to watch them sort of try to figure out what they're going to do now that I've put the wild card down on the table in their lives, so to speak. So kind of that image of a collision knocking something out of orbit is theme number 3. Okay, theme number 4 is going to be a season meant for the loosening of the bond. So again, very, very related. But when you think of Uranus being so prominent with the new moon that's coming through, with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, with the Sun-Uranus synodic reset, Uranus is very strong in the mix here. And Uranus isn't long for Taurus, right? Uranus will move into Gemini in not too distant of a future from now. So this is kind of Uranus's big hurrah, as it were. We have this massive 14-year conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Taurus, and the new moon coming through just, for me, really highlights, hey, there could be something that is, if something has been bound or held together, if there has been a tradition or something in the past, if there has been a way that we think about people and relationships and what we expect of them and what they expect of us, or commitments in work, or any kind of thing that holds you together, that is like a fetter or a binding. And this term actually comes from the ancient astrology technique that we use for looking at people's astrology charts and predicting, a year ahead forecast or something like that for their birth charts, where you can use the zodiacal timing technique, which is incredibly phenomenal and powerful. But there are these moments within this technique that the ancients called the loosening of the bonds, when there was just the need for the binding to come off, and it gives freedom, it gives revitalization. So could this be a time where, just in a number of ways, there's a sense of like what has held is somehow coming off, the bindings, or the fetters, or the chains, or the responsibilities, the duties, all of those things that sort of give structure can potentially be loosened. Maybe they don't come totally off, right? But they at least get loosened, and there's something that sort of breaks through in a way. That can be scary too. That idea of, well, like, I don't want something to change. Things are clicking along nicely, and especially in the solid sign of Taurus, where a lot of times Taurus can be really fixed, can hold to ideas, or desires, or dreams, or aspirations, ambitions. Yeah, all of those things. It's scary to think about when something could come along and disrupt or change that, right? So that is something that is scary, but just seems to be a natural part of life. Afterwards, a lot of times the changes aren't as scary as we thought they were going to be. It's just that we have a propensity to resist change, because change is the unknown. It's we don't know what's coming if something changes, right? It's hard to say for sure. So maybe it's better that it doesn't change. But Uranus can be that thing that says, well, you didn't necessarily want that to change, but it did, and it's not so bad, and maybe it's even better, or something like that. So that is theme number 4, is sort of the beginning, or a season that is meant to herald the loosening, or the loosening of bonds or chains, or something like that. Theme number 5 is accelerated perception, ambition, and success. This is happening in Venus's sign, a sign that is a culminative solar place, where the sun is growing in strength and is heading towards the solar apex of the year, where the sun is at its highest, the summer solstice. So Taurus is a sign that is very much fixed on almost like a very ambitious center, and it sees the goal, it sees the ambition, it sees the dream, the desire, and it heads steadily up and up and up towards that. So with Uranus there, a planet that can sometimes relate to things becoming accelerated, you could see something like the acceleration of perception that lends itself towards success. But you could also see an acceleration in the ambitiousness of things that we want. And I think with Venus here, it's also likely that it could just simply mean that there's an acceleration of us getting things that we have been striving towards, having success in some way. So that's theme number 5 too, obviously a pretty positive one. And of course, we have to throw in a little bit of the dark side of some of this Taurus Uranus energy, which is that oftentimes Uranus in the mix can just represent things that are disruptive, or chaotic, erratic, destructive, when the energy goes too far. In other words, the center that is holding a barrage of revolutionary spirit comes along and breaks it down, and maybe there's not even a good reason for it, but Uranus can have that that quality of going too hard, too far, too radical. And I think with Jupiter there, on the worst case scenario, Jupiter also can go to way too far, right? It can just blow something up way too much. It can water a plant to the point that the plant drowns or something like that. It's, you plants is benefited by the rains, but if it rains and it doesn't stop, then there's flooding and then it's destructive. So both Jupiter, Uranus can speak to on the extreme side of things, disruption, erratic things, destructiveness, revolt, rebellion, that can be flying in the face of stability or order to the point where it's just almost like chaos for chaos's sake, or radicalism, that is just has no point, or goes too far in some way that ends up destroying more than it gives freedom, or something like that. So disruptive, erratic, or destructiveness that is aimed at the center of something. That could also be Sun Uranus as well. Now, with both Venus and Jupiter in this sign, I don't think that this theme is likely to show up as strongly as if, Venus didn't have reception with Taurus, or it's much more likely that you're going to get the benefic qualities of such things. But, sometimes going too far means just being too indulgent, partying too much, or socializing to the point of detriment where things aren't getting done, or, something like that, not taking care of responsibilities or something like that. So it doesn't have to be a revolutionary war, although sometimes Uranus means that it is going to be the revolutionary war. But with Venus and Jupiter here, I think it's much more likely that it goes into a place of indulgence, or pleasure, gratification, or pleasure seeking, and that's the way that it can go too far. So I think on the shadow side, you may have to watch out for some things like that. But okay, well, that's what I have for today. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I'll be back again with another Mantic Monday episode next week, and we'll take a look at most likely a continuation of some of these same themes that begin to change as things move into Gemini as the year progresses on. So hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.